Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and today I'm excited to feature a conversation I recorded recently with two of our students in our class of 2020, Jonas Porcar-Ferrer and Bhavin Patel. So we are here on the podcast, always trying to innovate, trying to tell the story of the program experience through a series of interviews with students as they progress through the program. So sat down with Jonas and Bhavin after they were in the program for a few weeks. They're now in quarter two, so we're going to catch up with them and talk a little bit more about the global residency experience and some of the things that they've been up to. But this is the first of several installments in an ongoing conversation about the student experience. I think you'll enjoy hearing a little bit more about what they have to say. So without further ado, here is my conversation with two members of our class of 2020, Jonas Porcar-Ferrer and Bhavin Patel. Bhavin, Jonas, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for our listeners at home, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Bhavin, let's get started with you. Who are you and where are you from?
So my name is Bhavin Patel. Like Brett mentioned, I'm in the class of 2020. I'm part of the EMBA, which is Global Executive MBA program here at Darden. And I live in Pennsylvania. I work at a major pharmaceutical company.
And how about you, Jonas?
My name is Jonas Porcar. I'm originally from Spain. I've been living here in the U.S. for the past 7 years, almost. Originally, I'm an electrical engineer, but I also did a Master's in International Business, and I work for a Spanish company in the aerospace sector. It's called GMV, and I'm Vice President for North America.
So as context for our conversation today, the goal with the podcast is to sort of follow you and some of your classmates through the 21 months of the program. So as we are sitting here recording this podcast, you are kind of sort of, close to a month in. You've been through LR1 and orientation, and you're in the midst of your first weekend residency. So we're going to get into a little bit of that soon. But tell us a little bit more about how you chose to get an MBA. Obviously, that's a process. That typically takes some time. And so, Jonas, starting with you, how did you make the decision to come back to school and get an MBA?
Well, it was an idea that I've had on my mind for quite some time. And well, after I got a promotion last year, and I thought it was the right moment because I thought it was time to renew my tool set, just to face the new challenges that I face at work. And the executive format was excellent for me because I didn't want to get out of my job, and I think it was very convenient.
And Bhavin, how about you? How did you make the decision to come back and get an MBA?
So I have over 11 years of experience in primarily healthcare and also in consulting, healthcare consulting, and as I was reflecting on my career, in the past 11 years, I've changed functions within the healthcare industry, but haven't really stretched myself to really learn the business and finance side of the business. So, as I was looking at my resume one day, it occurred to me that, when I'm talking to individuals, higher level within my companies that I work at and I used to work at, there were some discussions that I felt that I couldn't really contribute as much. And that was primarily due to not having just strong business and finance fundamentals knowledge. So, as I, searched options for a master's program, I found out that MBA was the best option for me, and I definitely want to go to a top 10 program. So that's how I came to, choose that MBA was the next, degree and the only degree that I would pursue.
All right, and so you're both here at Darden. You're in our executive formats. You're working. You're busy. But how did you choose Darden? What about this experience in particular resonated with you?
So this is Bhavin. I'll go first. Darden came to me. One of my former colleague was a full-time MBA student here, and I talked to him. And I also talked through Brett. I also was able to talk to a couple of their students, and I did my own research. And three things that jumped out at me as I was doing my research and as I talked to students were case method. If you listen to the podcast, you probably hear about it. Brett mentioned it, or some other student mentioned it. But case method is the primary learning tool here at Darden, and 1 week, now a couple of weeks into it, I truly believe that that's the only method that works best for me, because it's truly immersive. You can really understand the core concepts pretty clearly, as opposed to just theoretical based learning. The second was networking, and as the name implies, you just have vast access to network with just talented individuals from all different countries and geographies. And the last one is the strong management, general management program here at Darden. And as I work in the healthcare industry, and as you bring in more automation, more AI, and I believe that I want to be a good manager, so I can ask those questions of the people or team that are working for me. I don't necessarily have to be a master, get a master's degree in AI or automation, but if I can understand from general manager's perspective, what things I need to be aware of, it just make me a better leader and a better manager.
So Jonas, I imagine that some of those things resonate.
Yeah, definitely. I also, of course, I did my research, and Darden came up as the best school in the DC area. I wanted to stay around DC. Also, I think there's 3 factors that were important for me when I did my decision on applying to Darden. The focus on ethics. Darden's mission focuses on educate responsible leaders, and it's something also that resonates with my values and the way I am. Also, part of my research, I came to several events here in the new facility in Roslyn, and I was immediately attracted to the sense of community that this school has. Since the very first moment, I felt part of it. Like, everybody welcomed me, alumni, staff, everybody, and that was really attractive to me. And also, last but not least, the case method. I think it's. I didn't want to go back to a regular university class, really theoretical, and the case method really is very involving. It puts you in the shoes of the manager, of the executive, and you can apply the things you learn here, in your job, pretty much the week after you learn something. So it's really attractive.
Yeah, we've had quite a few conversations with students about the case method, and I think part of the reason why we talk about it so much on the podcast is it's not entirely clear what exactly it means, right? When you first learn about it, it's like, case method, what is that? And I've asked a lot of folks to explain, what it is, and I thought both of you made good points, right? It's a learning process that's all about knowledge and application, right? You read a business case, it's like a story, and it has supporting information and technical notes and all these kinds of things, but ultimately, when you're thinking about the case, you're in the role of a senior leader, right? It's an opportunity to practice those leadership skills, those management skills in class, but with 65 different perspectives around you. And Bhavin, to your point earlier, right? You come from a healthcare background. Jonas, you're from
aerospace, cybersecurity. Yeah.
Right. So both very different backgrounds. You're sitting in class talking about the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So you get outside of your vertical and hear different industries and learn from each other. So as I mentioned at the outset, our goal is to get a sense of your experience as you move through the program and your classmates' experience. And so let's back up just a little bit. So you came to Grounds not so long ago for orientation in LR1. For those of you at home still learning about our program, all students, regardless of what section, Charlottesville or Roslyn, everyone comes to Charlottesville at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program for a week-long leadership residency. The first one's called Leading with an Enterprise Perspective. And so, Jonas, let's start with you.
Okay.
How was that week? What was it like?
It was really challenging and intense. I mean, you literally don't stop. Either you're in class or doing social events or learning with your team. At the beginning, I felt it was a little bit intimidating, but it's part of the excitement, I guess. I think that it really opens your eyes about what this learning process is, and also it gives you a taste of what's coming up, because one of the things that is really particular is that they put you straight into the jungle, but you don't have the tools to move around. Let's say, use that metaphor. So you're like dealing or reading some cases and working on cases that you don't really have the tools at that moment. You just have started your MBA, but you get a sense of what is coming up and the different perspectives that a leader needs to have on every decision. And that's, I think, that the main point of this LR1. So to lead from an enterprise perspective means that you need to take into consideration the finance part, the ethics part. So that's, I think, that the main point of this period.
So, Bhavin, how about you? Did you find that a lot came your way in a relatively short period of time?
Absolutely. So I agree with Jonas with everything that he said there. Just to kind of highlight a few of the different aspects that I encountered where I thought were great. Were just focus on inclusion, diversity, ethics. I think when you're a leader, general manager, all those three things, definitely matter a lot when you're leading a big or small organization. And just the sheer amount of focus and the content that we were provided to work through really helps, shapes you to become a better leader, and really helps you think through how would you, deal in a certain scenario or situation. And it provides you a psychologically, safe environment where you can truly openly discuss, even controversial. Some of the cases we discussed were you probably heard in the news or seen on the TV. So it provides you a very good environment to understand how others. You can have your own view and how you would respond to the situation, but you can also figure out exactly what other 64 of your colleagues think about that same exact opinion or how the company responded to a certain situation. Moving along and just focus on the different diversity of the companies or the topics that we discussed. I think that's also important because all of us are from different industries, different backgrounds. So, if I've never worked in finance, if I've never worked in aerospace, it helps me understand when we're talking about different companies, different industries, how do they think about problems, how do they solve it. And I think focus, like Jonas mentioned in LR1, is enterprise perspective. And I think, intent is very intense from the get-go to make sure you're prepared for the rigor that's coming in the next 21 months. And through that, though, we also have fun. There was, team building exercises. The program team does a great job of making sure, all your needs are taken care of. So I think that's also important because, you're away from your family. We all, all of us work full time. Most of us have, families or if not, we have, kids on the way. So, it becomes challenging to juggle those requirements. But, having this team in place is very, welcoming. It's also provides you, some sort of comfort that, while you're here, you don't have to worry about, the basic, day-to-day needs they're taken care of.
Yes, we had Kathy Masloff on the podcast,
Absolutely.
And that's going to come out soon. Our interview with her all about the program team and how they think about supporting students. And, whether you're here with Ann and Roslyn or Kathy down in Charlottesville, they're always around. They're always here to help. And you're right that they do help make the experiences as smooth as possible. And the thing that they always come back to is everyone in this program has a lot on their plate, personally, professionally. And so when you're here, we want you to just be able to focus on school and
Absolutely.
To really get the most out of the weekends. And so it's great to hear that you feel that way.
Absolutely.
So you're at the beginning of a process. I think most people would acknowledge that Darden, when you start out, a lot comes your way, and it's pretty challenging. How's it going? How are you managing the workload, or is the workload managing you? How's it going?
A little bit of both. So I'll be very candid. This is our first residency on grounds here at Roslyn, beautiful campus. Definitely you have to make sure you're paying attention to the calendar, you're paying attention to all the notifications that are coming your way. The team's done a great job at setting up the expectation in terms of what's to come, but you do have to do the work, and that's regardless of your family and your work life. You have to put in the work, and I came into this knowing that, but now, just kind of affirms the fact that you have to make sure you're reading the cases, you're doing you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, working with your, learning teams, which is another exciting part of it. You get to, meet colleagues, people from different, backgrounds, different industries, and you're with that group for certain quarters. So I think kind of, builds that camaraderie. But the rigors there, it excites me because and that's why I'm here. I didn't choose the program because it was easy, and I chose it, for the rigor. So that's been my experience the first week. But I'm all, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, that I'm a EMBA, which is a global executive MBA program. So I'll be going to the 4 residencies. So I'm also looking forward to that. We have Brazil residency coming up in early November. So we have a few of our colleagues also preparing, what are we going to do when we get there besides the visits and the learning that's going to take place there.
Yeah, there's a lot there that resonates. So I've had quite a few people on the podcast who say, the nice thing about the case method is that it holds you accountable, right? You can't just push everything to the side, and you have some skin in the game, and you know that you might be called on.
Absolutely. And
it was fun talking with some of your classmates at breakfast this morning about how things were going, and they said, well, it's funny, I was working ahead, but I realized that maybe reading everything a week and a half before the residency was too far ahead. So there's like a sweet spot where you can, it's still top of mind, it's still fresh. But the general advice, and I'm going to get into time management in a second, but the general advice is to have your cases read before you show up for residency, just because there's a lot. I mean, you're in class, that first day, 10 to 5, the second day, 8 to 5, 8 to 3 on the last day. It's not a lot of time for like, oh, I'm going to go read that case, So,
you're right.
How about you, Jonas?
Pretty much same as Bhavin. I'm still learning, but I like the challenge. So of course you have to balance your personal life, your family, and of course your work. But it's kind of like juggling. Like you need to learn where to find, like, it could be like 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. 30 minutes, but you need to find these times just to go through the cases. And it's amazing. I'm realizing how much time I was wasting before starting this process. So right now, what I do, I personally recommend to everybody is just to be able to somehow synchronize all information about the cases, so you can have it in your phone or in your laptop or in your tablet. So if you're in the metro or you are flying or you are like, I don't know, you have time to burn, let's say, you can always have your cases available and read. And that's one of the advices up to this point that I have for anybody that's thinking about following this path. Yeah.
It is worth noting that managing your time in this program, much like the case method itself, is iterative, right? Yeah, you get better at it as you go along. You learn, like, for example, your classmates who said, well, I was reading ahead, but maybe too far ahead. You learn about the best practices for you. Everybody kind of finds their way. And
it also makes you a better collaborator, because at some point you realize, you're part of a team. Whether it's 4 or 5, you're part of a team. So you have to figure out a way. If you're a manager, you can't do everything. You cannot do everything by yourself. You're not going to be a good manager. So I think that also, I like the fact that we have a learning team here. So, I can always rely on my team. If I have a week that I'm very busy, my learning team's there. It helps me understand exactly which cases I need to put a lot of time in, which cases I need to understand. They're very technical. They will help me get through those regardless how much time I have. So, know that safety blanket, if you will, is also there. You're not just, thrown in without, any safety checks. So I think I like that because, it just makes you a better collaborator. And we figured out in the, couple weeks now, learning teams, we figured out a couple of techniques that, just made us efficient. And because we know we don't have a lot of time during the week and during the weekends. So when we are with the learning team, we are actively working on the cases. Obviously, we're having fun, but we have a goal that we want to accomplish, and we were very focused in accomplishing whatever activity there we were trying to work on.
Just like a meeting at work,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And at this point, we already pretty much know who's good with numbers or who's good with finance. So as we have this like a variety of backgrounds even within the team, like we have a specialist, let's say. So we know that this particular case, I can go to this particular partner and I'll get like explanations. And it's kind of like specialized jobs, or like and I think it works really well. Like.
Yeah.
So for those of you wondering what a learning team is, I mean, some people know this, some people don't. So just checking in here. Here in the Executive MBA program, learning teams typically consist of about 4 to 5 team members. Try to spread out industries and backgrounds across the teams, and that's very intentional. And so the program leadership works to do that. That process is managed by the assistant dean for our program, Barbara Millard, who Bhavin Jonas has also been on the podcast, as you may know. So she manages that, and we try to have the poets and the quants represented. So as Jonas noted, there will be someone on your team or someone on your team who are comfortable with numbers, and other folks who will bring other strengths. And so hopefully you have a little microcosm of the broader class discussion. And here in our program, you get one learning team during a domestic quarter. So again, a little bit more detail. Domestic quarter is when you're in your base location, either Charlottesville or Roslyn. No global trip is offered in that quarter. And then for the first global quarter, so quarter 2, Bhavin will be in Brazil, and the students who are not traveling will be here in Roslyn. And so you're actually assigned a second learning team for that quarter. And then after that, it's really up to you how you choose to use a learning team. Students will sometimes form their own or continue to work with their domestic team, and perhaps in the global quarters collaborate. But it's an important part of getting your work done, because to Bhavin's point, I've had very few people on the podcast who said, I did this program. I've never had anyone say this. I completely did this program on my own. All the cases, I did them on my own. That's not the culture. Everybody's moving in the same direction, collaborating, divide and conquer. Absolutely.
Very inclusive.
Yeah. So you're now in your first weekend residency, and we've talked a little bit about how busy it is. Mm-hmm. And you're in 2 pretty challenging classes, global economics and decision analysis. How's it going?
Yeah, so, like Jonas mentioned earlier, it's definitely challenging, but at the same time, the learning, we're learning so much about, different factors. Economics, we're learning about, the macro level factors that can affect a company of any size, and whether it's Fortune 500 or you're a startup. There's always things that you need to know about as a manager or as a leader. Certain factors that can affect your company when you're making big or small decisions. So I think that's also important. And case method comes into play. When you're being cold called, you have to know the material. You have to know the case. So I think it makes you, if you're a CEO of a company, if you're a C-level executive, you have to know the facts. And at any point, the situation may present itself, but you have to make a decision with the limited facts. And that's what we go through, in each case discussion. We don't have all the facts, all the data in the world. And more importantly, we don't have the time that it would take to analyze every decision to the very, granular level. So you have to make a decision in a timely fashion, keeping all the stakeholders in mind. And I think that's what, I'm learning, which is great. Decision analysis, it gives you a structure, to make those decisions, as opposed to just going by your gut or just going by intuition. Intuition is important, but I think it just makes you, gives you a structure so you can, complement, with your intuition. So, again, talking about C-suite or, entrepreneur, whichever capacity, you're in, I think it just helps you, develop those muscles over time, which you can exercise, in a, like I said, psychologically safe environment that you may or may not be able to exercise, in real world, because the risks are just that great, or you may not even have the option to do that.
Yeah, so what are the chances that this particular kind of problem slides across your desk, right? And there's certainly the stakes of of working on some of this stuff in the real world versus the educational environment. A little different, right? Yeah. So everybody's here to learn, and learning here is a little different than learning out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jonas, how about for you?
I'm fascinated about economics, and especially I'm not only Spaniard. I work for a Spanish company, so we are global. So we operate in 12 different countries around the world. So it's very important for us to care about the global economic environment, and you really realize how important it is, like the economies, and to be able to analyze important economic factors when doing business internationally. And also with decision analysis is newer to me, and I'm enjoying it a lot too, because sometimes when you have to, in your personal life and your work life, your face decisions are complex, where you have to weigh like not only quantitative like factors but also qualitative, and they're giving us the tools and a general framework to be able to put that like in a structured way where you can decide based on a particular outcome or on a particular factor, and I'm enjoying it, and I can't wait to progress into the course.
Yeah, this is these two classes, I think, good entry point, right? Because you get the sort of global perspective with Jim, with Peter, to bear, and then decision analysis. I think for certainly talking with some students, if you're less quant comfortable, it can be a class that stretches you, but to both of your points, gives you a good framework for the rest. I mean, there's no accident as to why it's up front, right? So it's going to be sort of foundational for a lot of what you do later. The thing that we also stress with students, when you come in, and it's been interesting sitting with people during lunch as well, saying like, this is the beginning of a process. You will get much better as you move through that. What are the things that you're telling yourself as you're having sort of these moments where it feels like a lot, or it feels kind of intense? What have you found helpful to sort of check back in with?
Yeah, so for me, one thing is just understanding my schedule, work schedule, understanding what my requirements are there. Just having clear communication. At work, at home, with my family, and also with my learning team. When we're not here together, we're checking in every week, whether it's on Skype or Zoom. So we're making time for each other to make sure we're checking in, and we're addressing. If somebody has a question, if I have a question, I have somebody to go to who can help me. So we're just making sure the support system is there. And we're clearly communicated and keeping that channels of communication open in terms of my workload or my needs, and that way just being very open about it just helps you, as opposed to me stressing about it and not talking to somebody. I think that's the worst thing you can do, is just be very open, and just acknowledge that you have to do X number of cases or X number of reading done in a week. And how much time do you have, and what are the things that you can put off? Can I turn off Netflix? So it's barbecue party this weekend, that I'm not gonna go to. So things like that. I mean, you have to make sacrifices, and that's very real. If you're a prospective student, just keep that in mind, that the rigor's there and it's doable. But it's definitely. You definitely have to understand that the work requirement is there, because you're going to learn, but you have to know the content going into the classes, because the expectation is that you're going to contribute, and not only you're going to learn from your classmates, but your classmates are going to learn from you.
That's well said. Yeah. Your point about what's important, sort of what are the number one priorities, that prioritization. On the Admitted Student blog this summer, we had a lot of advice from students, and we've asked people for advice here on the podcast, and that is something you hear time and again, that the program does force you to sort of ask that question of what's most important in my life, and you make time for those things, but for at least the 21 months while you're in school, there will be some sacrifices, but it's a temporary situation. How about for you, Jonas?
Yeah, I think that first of all, don't panic. It's one of the messages. It's gonna be okay. Yeah, and I think at the beginning I was like putting a lot of work on every case, like going really deep into each one. And as you progress into the program and you read more cases and you go to classes, you find like the sweet spot on the right amount of depth of the time you need to put on a particular case. Because at some point there's this thing about the diminishing returns where it doesn't matter if you put like 10 more hours, you won't benefit from it that much in the class. So I'm learning on that. I find a good compromise already. Also, talking about your personal life transparency, and it's really important. In my case with my partner, I think I'm sharing my calendar with her, so I want her to be involved in the program. She's an economist, so she's kind of helping me at some point. So and she has an MBA, so it's very convenient to have her.
A good partner
Yeah, exactly. So I'm asking her like stuff about the cases. I share with her. I want her to be part of this experience. I think that's important.
It's very important. I think almost everybody would say it's a village, right? Everybody has a support network, and when you earn your MBA on that graduation day, it's not just about you, it's about all the people that made it possible for you to be here. And so, everything that y'all have said really resonates with past conversations I've had. And it's been fascinating to have these discussions with students and hear some of these similar themes. And the other thing, before coming to Darden, I worked with law students, and case method is in law school. And the thing that you learn almost immediately is when you start the case method, you're not that great at reading cases, right? You tend to pay too much attention to things that don't really matter. You get too deep into stuff that doesn't have real relevance for the discussion. And have you found this, even as you get started, like now you're a few weeks in, are you better at reading cases than you were when you first began?
Yeah, I think so. I think Jonas mentioned that earlier that you can spend 10 hours on a case, you can spend 5 minutes on a case, or you can figure out exactly what works. Because initially when I was reading cases, just kind of reading through for example, a case is 20 pages, there were so many exhibits that you have to go through, which ones are important, which ones are not. And going through that, just if you're a manager, day to day, you're presented with so much information. I mean, in general, right, in this information age, we have just so much information thrown our way. So, I think that process also helps you. How can you take all this information and narrow it down to what's really important to what the objective is? Because at the end of the day, we have to take the facts, a set of information that we're given, and we have to make a decision, or we have to discuss that and then make a decision. Because some cases, there is clear answer, and some cases, there is no clear yes or no. It really depends on a number of factors. So I think understanding exactly what's the amount of effort you need to put into to be able to grab those pieces of facts and information that are relevant to the discussion in the case based on what I learned so far is definitely making me more efficient. So obviously there are cases that are outside of my scope and that I've never even worked in some of these industries. So if it's especially a case in maybe like aerospace, I mean, I would have no idea about the manufacturing process or how the process works. So I think if it's very technical, I would try to find a way for me to really understand at a higher level, what can I assimilate and how can I understand this case, what information is relevant, high level, and how can I take that and make a decision, or how can I have a number of set of facts that will help me be of value and help me add a value in my case discussion.
How about you, Jonas?
Yeah, adding up on what he said, like I'm loving that I'm learning about so many industries, because part of the case also there's like information about the particular industry, what is the landscape, what is the market share, so you learn. And I also like that at the beginning you focus a lot on what is the right answer. I mean, there's questions in the cases usually just to help you think about it. and you're in class and you think about, okay, but what is the solution to this? The professor will come up with, okay, this is the right answer. And that almost never happens. The professor wants to hear the right questions. That's the outcome that you get from the case. Yeah. So you need to you learn how to ask the right questions. You won't probably get like the answers, like absolute answers, but you need to focus, and that leads back to the enterprise perspective. So you need to be able to know about finance, to know about ethics, to know about different perspectives, because when a case comes, it has different edges, different angles, and you need to tackle it from different perspectives to get to an outcome.
Yeah, all the while asking the right questions. Right, so Socratic method, right? It's all about structured rhetorical questioning. So, well, Bhavin, Jonas, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Look forward to visiting with you throughout the program. So we know Bhavin's going to Brazil. Mm-hmm. How about you, Jonas?
I'm going to India. India. So okay. I'm going to be the very last.
Yeah, quarter 8, we're going to have to check in with you.
Exactly.
About that. So, well, we look forward to hearing more about your trip to Brazil, Bhavin. I will say Lottie Carr, we just recorded an interview all about the work that she does with our Center for Global Initiatives. I think she may be on that trip with you, or at least there in spirit. So, guys, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having this podcast. Thank you.
And that was my conversation with Jonas Porcar-Ferrer and Bhavin Patel, 2 students in our ExecMBA class of 2020. So, of course, as always, if you have comments, questions, suggestions, requests, we are all ears here at the ExecMBA podcast. You can reach us at exec, that's EXECMBA at darden.virginia.edu. Until next time, thanks for listening.